Hello there, World of Tankers. I'm Blitz, and today I'm going to be telling you the best tank lines to grind in the game. So before I tell you anything, just remember this is an opinion, and I'm guessing many of you have your own, so let me know what you think in the comments down below. To help me decide which tank I was going to pick, I first had to create a couple of categories to narrow down my search, and the first one was damage per shot. Now the reason this one was really important for me is because let's say a 183 is aiming at you with a Hess shell. Now if you're in a tank like a 62A, he's going to be shooting you for 1300, backing behind cover, and you're only probably going to be getting one shot into him for 310. And I think all of you will agree that is a terrible trade-off. Now, if you're running a tank like an Object 268 and that 183 hits you, sure, you're still going to be losing all of your hit points, but you're going to be taking off 640, so you're going to be way better off than you were in the 62A. The second category was speed and mobility, and I'm guessing all of you already know that this is extremely important, especially when you have to deal with medium tanks. If you're running a tank like the U100 and you're up against 4 medium tanks on that enemy team and you're seeing that your team is being demolished by the medium tanks, the issue is that you're not quick enough to get into that spot, help your mediums out, and even if you do get into that spot, by the time you get there, they're all going to be dead, and then you're going to be flanked and killed as well. So speed and mobility is something that's really important. And then the last one is survivability. You don't want to be running a tank like a Leopard 1 because, again, if any tank destroyer, or really any tank in the game at all, is aiming at you, sure, the Leopard has one of the most accurate guns in the game, it's very quick, it's very good in most characteristics, but it doesn't have a lot of hit points and it does not have any armor. So as soon as you come up against a tank like an E100 or a Jagdpanzer or anything like that, one shell is going to be completely ruining your game. So as soon as I had made those categories, I put them to work, and I immediately crossed off the entire tank destroyer line. And the reason for that being is, yes, tank destroyers, they can be very good. A tank like the Foch 155 is regarded as overpowered. However, if you run any tank like a Batchat or you run any fast tank, you can easily get behind a Foch, and that's because it doesn't have a turret. If you're running a tank destroyer, it doesn't matter if you're fast, slow, you have great alpha, you got great damage per minute. If the medium flank wins, chances are you're probably going to die. You're going to get flanked, you're going to get tracked, and that's going to be the end of you. So I was thinking, you know what, tank destroyers, they just really can't fight a battle on their own like any other tank. I love my Badger. It's one of my favorite tanks. It's very good. Cost me a crazy ton of money to get. But the issue with the Badger is, yes, it has great armor. It has one of the best guns in the game. Excellent damage per minute. But as soon as that thing gets tracked by any vehicle, it is easily flanked. And because it doesn't turn very fast, that's the end of your game. So I immediately crossed off the tank destroyers. Next up on the list, I looked at the lights, and I'm like, okay, we got a Batchat and a Sheridan. And while I did make a video on the Batchat saying it's the most influential tank on the battlefield, the issue with the Batchat is you have to know how to run it. And I wanted to pick a tank where you could be great at the game or you could be bad. It doesn't matter. The tank is going to perform well, it's going to bounce shots, it's going to do its job. So it's like, okay, the Batchat, not this type of tank. Then I looked at the Sheridan. I was like, once again, the Sheridan is, in my opinion, overpowered because it's got the missiles, it's got the ridiculously strong APCR rounds. However, it doesn't have great penetration with its standard ammo. You have to know how to use the missiles well, and 90% of the time when I run a Sheridan, my team falls apart around me, and you really can't do much by then because it just doesn't have damage per minute. It can run away, but really, you're not going to be doing that much. So I was like, okay, Sheridan, I'm also going to cross that off. Next in line was the mediums, and what do they got? Well, damage per minute is through the roof, accuracy is very good as well, they've got strong turrets and great mobility, which sounds really good. However, there were a couple things that I also didn't have. The first one was damage per shot. You're not going to be trading 310 average damage with any heavies really in the game. As well, the survivability on these tanks is not too good. While they do have very strong turrets, if you can get a shot into their hull armor, they're not going to be bouncing much, and because they don't have a great hit point pool, one shot from an E100 is taking off 1/3 of an entire medium tank's hit points. So finally I moved on to the heavy class, and I immediately canceled off all the German heavies, because I was like, okay, they've got the average damage per shot, they've got the armor, they've got the survivability, but they don't have mobility, and that's one of the most important factors, because if you're in a slow heavy, and let's say the mediums flank through and they're killing your tank destroyers behind you, there's not much you can do against a medium that's just going to keep pummeling you with shell after shell from the rear as you're trying to shoot the other heavies in the front. So I immediately crossed off all the slow German heavies. So then I took a look at the 2 and 5B, and I'm like, okay, the 2 and 5B, not great damage per shot, not great survivability. It does have a great gun, but overall, it's like, this tank isn't going to be doing much, and that was the same for the American heavies as well. They don't have great armor, they're a little bit power creeped lately in the game. And the 57 Heavy was a very close choice for me just because the 57 Heavy has such a menacing gun. But I pulled it out for a couple of games. I'm like, okay, it's a good tank, but the issue is that if your team falls apart, it doesn't have enough armor to hold its ground, to hold off the enemy heavies. If you're going to be pushed on, you're going to be pushed on hard. So I canceled those two tanks. And then I moved on to China, and I looked at the WZ-113. And while the WZ-113 has one of the best guns in the game, with 3,440 damage per minute, it's got a decent alpha at 420. The main issue with that tank is the armor and mobility. Yes, it can go 50 kilometers per hour forwards, but it has one of the worst turret speeds and traverse speeds I've ever seen in the game, and it is so annoying when you run that tank, and Sheridans just shoot you in the side because it has zero spaced armor, and it really doesn't bounce any shells in the front either, because yes, it's about 250, 300 millimeters thick in the front, but as soon as you load heat, that really steep angle of the upper plate armor just doesn't bounce much, because it's literally the same hull as the Chinese WZ-112 Glacial at tier 8. So the 113 I also crossed off. So I was left with the Russian heavies. I was like, okay, these could be good tanks. First, I looked at the IS-4. It's quick, it's got good mobility, great hit points at 2,800, which gives it a really good survivability. Now, the armor on the IS-4 isn't spectacular because, yes, the side armor is one of the thickest in the game. It can bounce pretty much any shell on the side. However, the frontal armor, you just load heat and it goes right through because it's only about 280 thick. So the IS-4, yes, it's very quick as well. It goes 42, but I was like, it just doesn't bounce many shells in the front. It's got a strong turret, but it really doesn't bounce much. So I looked at the IS-7, and I'm like, okay, it's got a good average damage. 460 is a decent amount. The aiming time, not too bad. It's got a damage per minute of around 2,600, so it can get at least some shells out. As well, the tank can go 50 kilometers per hour, and unlike the 113, it can actually turn. It's got really good mobility. It can keep up with most of the medium tanks in the game. And when looking at the armor profile of an IS-7, this is where the tank really excels. Now you might be thinking it's got that really weak lower plate because of that pike nose design. The lower plate sticks up quite a bit, and it's only about 220, 230 millimeters thick, which is still strong, but yeah, most rounds are easily going to be penning that. However, the main way to just counter that is hide the lower plate. When you're on a map like Himmelsdorf, you got bumps and rocks everywhere. You can easily hide the lower plate there. On any map you play on, you can easily hide your lower plate in IS-7 and instantly bounce 50, 60, 70% of the shells that are fired at you. And that's because the upper plate on this tank is ranging upwards of 350 millimeters thick, which means that pretty much any tier 10, unless they shoot heat, and they still have to pen the shell with their heat, are not even going to have a chance of penetrating this tank. And the issue with the IS-4 for me was that you can just load premium and go right through the IS-4's armor, where you're going to really struggle still trying to penetrate an IS-7, and you don't even have to angle it, you don't have to do anything, you just aim dead at the enemy. That's when your armor is going to be thickest, as long as you hide that lower plate. And that's why the IS-7 is just such a strong heavy. As well, it's got that ridiculously thick spaced armor on the sides, so when you have tanks like Sheridan shooting missiles at you and stuff like that, the missiles are just going to bounce right off the side of the tank, and it's got the strongest turret, in my opinion, in the entire game. It is impossible to pretty much shoot heat from a Jagdpanzer into the IS-7's turret unless you just have right next to the gun. So it is an extremely thick turret. Even shooting at the sides of the turret when the tank is aiming at somebody else is still extremely hard to do in an IS-7, so it has all of the categories fulfilled. And that's why I feel the IS-7 is currently the best tier 10 line to go for. However, I will say that if you're a very skilled player, this might not be the #1 option for you. Because, as I said before, I said the Batshot is the most influential tank in one of my videos, and I still strongly believe on that. However, you have to know how to run it. A Sheridan, it is overpowered only if you know how to run it. And that's how a lot of these tanks work. So if you're a very skilled player, of course, you're going to do better in a tank that requires more skill because it's going to give you a bigger payout. However, the IS-7 doesn't require a crazy amount of skill, and that's why it's so fun, is because you don't need to be a unicum. You don't need to be a 60, 70%er to do really well in this tank. You can be a 50%er, a 40%er, and you're going to bounce shots as long as you hide your lower plate and you know where the enemy's going. You can sit out in front of them, bounce 50% of the shells coming at you, and because the gun actually has really good dispersion factors, the hidden dispersion factors on the move and turning the turret, it can snap shells, it can do its job, it can get into position very quickly, you can hold a flank, anything like that. You'll notice that first game I showed you on Himmelsdorf, I ignored the team, I pushed alone, and I held the entire enemy team flank there, because I figured I'm in an IS-7, I want to show how strong the tank really is, and it's just such a strong vehicle. So if you don't have the tank, and you're newer to the game, or you don't have the line, and you're 50, 55%er, I would definitely suggest to try this tank out, because you will win in it, you will do well, and you'll enjoy it along the way. I just want to add, though, really quickly that this is an opinion. Of course, this isn't defined as the best tier 10 line to go for. There's many different tanks that a lot of you guys probably do better in according to your skills and how you like to play and your current playstyle and everything like that. But I feel that the i7 is just the strongest in every single category. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. List me what your favorite tank is, what you think the strongest tank is. And if you manage to convince me, I'll make another video saying, you know what, I also think this tank is really strong as well. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you did stick till the end of this video though, I hope you did enjoy it. And as always, if you're not subscribed already, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Hit that bell icon so you know when I notify you on some random post I have. But other than that, I really hope you did enjoy this video, and I'll see you in the next one.